My presentation today is going to focus on developing sustainability of asset integrity management in Trinidad's energy sector organization and lessons for the wider Caribbean. And it's going to focus on a case study based on the implementation at Atlantic LNG. So what is sustainability? This paper focuses on sustainability through the implementation of codes and standards and life cycle assessments. As I said, it's illustrated using the implementation of the AIM standard at Atlantic, and sustainability defined in this project is based on being systematic, repeatable, where behaviors that result in a consistent output. So it's, for all of us here, we may have different interpretation of sustainability. This particular implementation focuses on behavior, and it focuses on repeated behavior that is repeatable over time with a consistent output. The base of the standard is focused on engineering, because all branches of engineering went into this standard, and all branches of engineering has actually built the base: electrical, mechanical, process safety, process engineering. So basically, in terms of engineering sustainability, by implementation of the standard, it has helped build sustainability. And this here is a story over the last 7 years or so. Okay, so in 2007, the asset integrity journey started for Atlantic. And it started by, first of all, identifying what were the major accident risks that the organization were exposed to. What happened is that during 2007 to 2009, it took a while to actually get the messages through and to get people aligned in terms of what was required to deliver the standard. And we had a wake-up call. We had a wake-up call in beginning of 2009 when we had an accident on one of our LNG tanks. And basically what happened is that we had what could have been classified as a major accident. And basically what we had happening here is that a number of barriers failed. And it resulted in a leak on one of our flanges on the tank that basically damaged the tank top. This tank was taken out of service for practically 2 years, and we had to operate with three tanks. So it means that how we were managing our loading and how we were managing the product was very, very difficult. One other thing around this accident is that it had a significant impact in terms of asset loss. There was also barriers that were not in place around our emergency response. It showed gaps in our management of change process. So it supported basically the implementation of the standard. Also, we were able to identify issues with our flare system, where we basically had vibrations that would have we wouldn't have been able to identify had we not really taken a greater look at our mechanical integrity. And basically over the 3 or 4 years ensuing, we were able to repair all these defects that were found. Okay, so also coming out of that major accident risk, we were able to identify on the plant what was our tolerance with respect to the level of manning. And basically what we saw is that in times of turnarounds where we had a lot of persons on site, we had a very high risk. So it basically helped us in managing our people on site. We were able to also identify our top 5 major risks. As you can see here, one of the major risks was loss of primary containment and structural integrity. So those were two of the 5 major risks that were identified. And basically what we would have done on site would be looking at putting mitigation plans in place to reduce these risks. The 5-year plan for the asset integrity standard wasn't, as I mentioned, we started in 2007, but we didn't really get into the implementation until 2009, when we basically had this standard approved through the Atlantic Board. And again, it followed on the wake-up call that we had. The engineer, this standard basically looked at 10 elements, and it looked at covering how we managed integrity across the asset. It would have looked at the element 1 was accountability, and element 2, competence. And this basically focused on people and the people barrier. And I'd like to just hail out one of my colleagues in the audience here, Mr. Messiah, Maurice. Maurice basically would have been our engineering authority when we started this implementation. And the engineering authority function focused around engineering assurance. Chris would be one of our technical authorities who supported Maurice, and Chris is also here. And that would have been basically a lot of focus on how we assured the engineering across the facility. And this would have been engineering not only in design, but also in technical and operations. So basically the asset integrity standard focused across all disciplines: design, operations, and technical integrity. Under the standard, some of the elements were also risk management, risk identification, process and facility integrity, protective systems. And one of the main areas around those elements were safety critical equipment. So one of the major projects that were initiated under the standard was the safety critical equipment project. And basically this really looked at equipment and asset on the facility that would have a big impact on your process safety if they were to fail. So this would have been one of the big initiatives. Another initiative was risk-based inspection. So this would have focused basically on all our process, all our pressure vessels, piping, and any part of the plant where we could have an issue, a loss of primary containment based on any of those equipment being damaged. Again, so this in 2010, these were some of the major elements that were implemented. So if you look on your left, you would see the first diagram that shows the bubbles, and on the right you will see what is our current risk matrix. We started off, first of all, in a very qualitative way approach where we started to identify our risks, and we moved to a more quantitative approach. So basically we identified the risks, but we were not initially able to quantify. But what happened is that as we started to get more develop more experience, we were able to move to where we were able to quantify the risk and actually be able to identify it better. In 2011, what followed next was to look at start developing practices that would help us in making what we do more sustainable. So we had a suite of engineering technical practices and site technical practices that were developed. A big part of this again fell under the engineering assurance organization. And basically, these practices, we would have gotten support from some of our shareholders, right? Atlantic being basically local company, but with a number of multinational shareholders. So we were able to benefit from the best practices from these organizations, and this actually helped us in developing our technical practices. Right? Some other processes that were developed would have been our incident investigation and learning and performance processes. In 2012, we identified a risk champion across the organization, and we were able to implement an electronic tool for managing our technical MOC or management of change processes. We were able to also fully implement the safety critical equipment management system. And we also brought in additional tools like the DNV FAST that helped us in developing our consequence modeling and bow tie. The consequence modeling basically looked at if you had a release on the facility, what would be the impact? You know, and we would have been able to model a lot of those and then look at putting mitigating measures in place for if any of those consequences happened. And the bow tie basically was a tool that we used to communicate risks. We also were able to fully develop our crisis management and emergency response scenarios for spills. So basically, as we went along, we kept developing all these processes and systems. In 2013, we were able to complete the inspection of all our process vessels across the facility, and we were able to complete the modification on the flare systems, as I mentioned earlier, where we identify induced vibrations. And we were able to also complete the full suite of life cycle integrity management strategies. At the end of 2013, we actually achieved implementation of the 36 minimum requirements of the standard. So basically, we were able to achieve the objectives we had set for the 5-year implementation plan. But it didn't finish there, because basically what it meant is that we were able to implement a standard over the 5 years, and we were able to implement a lot of systems, processes. We were able to touch people, the plant, and the processes. But a lot of it had to be embedded, and that's where the sustainability came in. The embedment of these elements of the standard, that has been continuing, and that's actually ongoing right now. So one of the initiatives that we implemented in 2012 was a process safety week. So this is one of the first of its kind in the industry with respect to process safety communication. Atlantic actually put aside a week every year from 2012. This year was our 4th year, and that week we spent focusing on process safety. We started off with basically the company and our service providers, and every year we keep adding our each of our shareholders In fact, so this year we actually had 4 of the shareholders together with Atlantic and all the service providers involved. So what we have used is actually use the Process Safety Week to spread the awareness and to communicate the process safety and asset integrity. So one of the things with this is that in the early 70s, we would have developed, we have a lot of the downstream industries, right? A lot of those facilities now are aging. And a question I'll ask is, do we have systems in place that will help us to continue running for the next 40 or 50 years? Or as long as our plant life exists? What about the competency of our people? One of the challenges we've been seeing in the industry is that we are losing a lot of our people to some of the international operations. In Atlantic, we've seen that over the last two or 3 years, we've lost 35 or 40 of our top senior operations personnel, not to the local industry, but basically to the Angolas and the Australia and Louisiana, a lot of the facilities there that are now starting up new facilities and are looking to commission and start up. And this goes across not only operations, but also our engineering folks. So my question would be, what are we prepared in terms of maintaining or sustaining our people and our plant in terms of where we are with the age of our facilities right now? Anyone would want to share what your thoughts are? Okay, so I would want to close with basically, again, highlighting how the AIM standard builds sustainability for us. Implementation and embedding of the standard ensures that the risk is better understood and focus placed on reducing the potential of high consequences, low probability events. The immediate benefits could be seen in how hydrocarbon leaks that can result in significant loss and/or environmental issues are being managed and reported. Better management of the safety critical equipment now result in more uptime and plant availability, which has resulted in a significant impact on the organization's bottom line and competitiveness. And there has been a marked improvement in the development of the organization's human capital by the implementation of a competency management system for all identified safety critical people, covering operations and technical staff. Risk management mitigation plans have led to very visible changes within the organization, including relocation of personnel not directly related with operating and maintaining the facility to off-site locations and protecting those who are required to remain on the facility. Now, this is what happened at Atlantic in terms of the implementation, but this is not particular to Atlantic. This can be applied across the organization, across the industry. So that's my contribution. Do you all have any questions?
Taking any questions from the floor? Fiola?
Yes, I have a question about how did you get buy-in from both the top as well as the people who actually implemented this? Talk about getting buy-in for adopting this process.
Very nice question. So the CEO actually signed off on the standard, and the chief operating officer was the single point of accountability for the implementation. So basically it started at the top. It started at leadership level. and actually getting that buy-in and that championing from leadership. But it involved a lot of engagement. So it wasn't simply basically saying this is what needs to be done. It was engaging at every level in the organization. The way the standard was done, there are 10 elements. So outside of the CEO and the COO, all the VPs and directors were each had ownership of an element. And under those guys, there was subject matter experts that were also involved. And throughout the process, it was performance managed. So my major role was performance management of the implementation.
Yes.
So it's just a comment, Harish, to support Harish on the question. And earlier on, we spoke about sustainable development and how we get that tacit knowledge from people who are in community and organization. One thing that Atlantic recognized was that the process safety engineering function was not, process safety engineering is not something you go and do at university as an undergraduate. It's currently not offered anywhere in the Caribbean, and I'm not sure if it's anywhere in the world. However, you could do a master's degree in it. We recognized that early, and we sent a gentleman to pursue it, who's in the audience now, Craig Farquhar. And we recognized that early, and so we actually put a process safety engineering function within the operations excellence team, which Harish manages. And is really looking at what can go wrong in the industry. And even though this is the chemical industry, is also looking at your own industry. What can go wrong? And embedding the tacit knowledge from the past. When we speak about push and pull factors, we have senior employees who are really good, who are being pulled out rather than pushed out. Why? Because the foreign currency, makes sense to them, and they probably want to earn a higher quality of living 5 years down the road. So they want to, it provides them a shortcut, for want of a better term. How do you keep that tacit knowledge? And one of the things that we have implemented and we've done is we actually built a process engineering manual that looks at evaluating equipment, right? So from the time a graduate engineer comes in, that manual is used to train that engineer. And it's a living document, so you update it. Any good performance management system looks at the element of competence. So first, accountability, as Harish mentioned. Accountability is important. And competence is another element. And what do we do? Are we doing enough to ensure that the people who we have in our organization are competent enough to weather the storm in the future?
Okay. Imtiaz, thanks very much. Atlantic leading the way again. One last question.
Right. Hi, I'm Maurice Messiah, BP, and IChemE. So, Harish, this must have cost some sort of money, to implement and so on. So my question to you is, do you have performance indicators to show that there was a benefit to this cost? And if you were a consultant to another company trying to sell this, can you justify this on a cost-benefit analysis basis?
Yeah, Maurice. So yes, there are performance indicator. One of the big things is you all remember there are a number of significant process safety disasters that happened over the years. Recently, we had the Macondo incident. Before that, we had the Texas City. Those are incidents. When they happen, they can wipe out your business, right? You can no longer exist as a business. So sometimes it may be difficult to quantify because process safety incidents do not occur as regular as normal personal safety. But yes, outside of that, there are a number of different indicators you could use. There are leading and lagging indicators. Some of the lagging indicators, as mentioned on the risk here, things like your loss of primary containment. If you can actually measure those, it will give you an indication of what's happening, what's the health of your facility. And that can help you build barriers so that you reduce those risks. Yeah?